take these two over to the garage, will you? I want them cleaned up before dinner.
But I was going into Toshi Station to pick up some power converters.
You can waste time with your friends when your chores are done. Now, come on, get to it.
I lightly knew about it beforehand because I actually, before anything, I think there was an art book. Because it's easy to release an art book in America. You don't have to translate anything. So I think there was an art book I saw previously about it. Because I've heard about it before. I've heard about most things that have to do with comics at some point or another. Anyway, let's let this clear up a little bit before we start the video. Alright, we're probably good, dude. Okay, let me get a shot too. Wolfie's gonna watch. This one's for
Thanks, Wolfie.
For being a dummy.
Honestly,
If you put too much shit on a poster, people are gonna read it and be like, okay, I don't want to watch this because there's like a million words here.
I feel it.
I think that's mostly.
No, I understand why they did it.
Today we saw Valerian, the City of a Thousand Planets, which is based on the French graphic novel Valerian and Laureline. So Connor, go into the details about the plot of this film.
Well, the French call it a visual comic series.
Valerian, Laureline.
Yeah.
Just the book.
Just that point. Alright, so basically this movie follows Valerian and Laureline, and they're like two FBI agents for the, what's the planet thingy called? The super satellite thing?
Alpha.
Alpha, the super, and basically it started out as like the International Space Station, basically, and all the countries from around the world started uniting in this thing, and then eventually we had aliens start coming in, and I think this takes place like 150 years later, or a couple hundred years later, I'm not sure. But basically we have Valerian and Laureline, and they're two basically federal agents of the future. They're kind of like the young hotshot agents, and Valerian's kind of a ladies' man, and he's trying to kind of hit on Laureline because I guess he wants to get some pussy or something, and so they kind of have that going, and basically he has a dream about this planet which is called Pearl. I think I don't know what the planet's called.
The planet is called,
but the species
Bull,
is Pearl, which is basically the avatars
UL.
from James Cameron's Avatar. Whatever, it doesn't matter. But basically these avatar-looking creatures live on the most peaceful planet ever. And it's like if the Native Americans never interfought and white people never came and tried to slaughter everyone. Like, they lived in peace, and they had these little animals that would sit around that they'd feed pearls and stuff. Basically, these things can multiply anything. And they were like super little sci-fi creatures. Well, one day, the humans were at war over the planet, and basically to make their escape, these humans essentially nukes the shit out of this planet as a distraction, and then they got away and won the fight. And unfortunately, the planet went extinct except for a certain amount of survivors, which was the king, the queen, their kid, which is the prince, and a couple other people. But their daughter dies on camera, and basically she's the link to Valerian, which I'll get into later. But basically it shows them, and they're on a top secret mission for, also spoiler alerts ahead, just so you guys know. We always do spoilers. If you watch Drunkview, it's a spoiler thing. Too drunk to figure out whether or not to do spoilers. But they are on this FBI mission, basically federal super space alpha mission, where they are sent off to basically collect from this gangster played, I think he might have been played by John Goodman. It sounded
John
like
Goodman
a
was
lot.
the thing.
Okay, that's what I thought. I heard it and I'm like, if that's not John Goodman, I'll eat my shorts. But it was
scientist from
John
Lilo
Goodman.
and Stitch.
John Goodman played the scientist from Lilo and Stitch, who you might better remember him from his other role as 1/4 portion guy from Star Wars: The Force Awakens. But he made his recurring role here, and he showed up and he was like, "I'm a gangster. I have this thing that'll multiply people." So a couple people surviving from the pearl species comes up, and they're like, "We want to buy this shit from you, and we'll get the guy to clone a bunch of pearls for you." And the dude's like, "Nah." But then Valerian comes in, and they're on this mission. They end up extracting it through this like VR thing, where if you're in the VR world, you're able to be like between dimensions.
It's a dimensional transfer thing.
Yeah, where you're basically in 2 dimensions at once. But
yeah,
whatever.
What he's doing, he has his hand in this box.
Yeah, the box will allow you to basically.
The box actually puts him in the other dimension, but he's wearing glasses that let him see the other dimension, and certain things have certain effects in both dimensions.
Exactly.
So it's kind of not explained well.
Just whatever, but he steals the thing, and they come back, and then they basically are charged with guarding the corporal. I believe the corporal.
I think he's a general.
No, the general is the guy that's under him. It's the other military man. He's the one over it, which I think is a corporal, but I don't know shit about the military. Anyways, the corporal is, he wants the little cloney guy for unspecified reasons, and Kara, or fucking Laurel, what the fuck's her name again? Loreline, I don't know, I can't think, I'm kind of drunk right now. Loreline keeps it on her, and basically at this point the pearls come into like the space UN meeting, and they freeze everybody, and they try to basically kidnap the general so that they can show him their point of view and try to get the cloner creature back, but it turns out that Loreline has it, at which point basically we have Valerian go in pursuit of these guys, because he doesn't know what the pearls are at this point, and he chases them, but his ship crashes, so Laurel goes after him. Loreline.
Like Coraline.
Right, I can't remember shit right now. Loreline goes out there, he tries to save him, but unfortunately, well, she saves him, and then there's this 40-minute plot about how they meet up, and basically it's basically John Carter, Warlord of Mars, 30-minute edition, and while she's held captive by the John Carter things with only 2 arms instead of 6, he ends up meeting Bubble, who is the Rihanna, and there's like a 20-minute scene of her doing like a stripper show, and then Rihanna's like, "Alright, so what's good?" And he's like, "You're the ultimate artist, and you're such a beautiful person." And then 25 minutes later or so, they save Loreline, and then Bubble dies, and the whole 40 minutes was 100% pointless because no character development happens, nothing that progresses the plot happens. But I guess Loreline gets saved, so then they go on and they basically.
It's like when an anime has.
It's like when an anime has a filler arc.
It's a filler arc. It's like you got.
Which is weird because the Valerian series is basically a series of visual novels and doesn't need a filler arc because they kind of come out when they come out, so it doesn't really make sense in the scheme of the story. You know, usually comics also have filler arcs, but as a series of graphic novels that they're trying to adapt, that doesn't make sense. But whatever, I'm moving on with the plot. We'll finish the plot, then we can talk about this. And then basically they find out the whole plot was by the corporal, which, surprise, surprise, the general and the agents team up with the pearls to help them basically remake their planet using this pearl thing, because it turns out if they have the little cloner guy in one of the pearls and like their super laser thing, that'll just like rebuild their planet, I guess, which whatever, who cares about that plot. And they basically capture the corporal and they save the day, and then Laurel and Loreline, they start dating it up. They get married or some shit. And for some reason, like the last 3 hours of the plot where she said, "You're just a douchebag," and they're only like actually doing stuff together for like an hour of this fucking ridiculously long movie. but whatever. And they get married or get engaged or something, and that was the movie. So Aidan, what did you think of Valerian, Loreline, Save Planet Earth, Save Planet Pearl?
Potential, execution.
Pretty much.
Because here's the thing, I'm not gonna pretend I know anything about this comic. I mean, I've looked into it a little bit since I got home from the movie like 2-3 hours ago. But the reality is, there was a lot of stuff I found interesting, and it was all not related to the plot at all. Like, I'm gonna ignore the pearls because they were just like lame Avatar ripoffs, but like, the idea of the International Space Station just continuing to grow until it becomes so absurdly big that it just becomes its own planet, and like some of the alien designs, especially the more minor ones, like at the start they have, when all the aliens are meeting up with the International Space Station people, there's like this weird goldfish in a robot suit, and there's like this jellyfish with like robot arms, and they have really interesting designs that I assume are all ripped from the comic. I mean, that's just an assumption.
I'm assuming they're redesigned. I'm assuming they're like updated versions of the
obviously,
comic.
like,
And the makeup and stuff, a lot of them like had like a mixture of practical effects and CGI, and it was like pretty damn close to what we were seeing in like The Force Awakens. Like, these effects were very fucking good in this movie.
Yeah, the makeup and stuff looked really good. There was some places where the CGI kind of fell apart, like, I mean, I don't want to go into that, but the CGI had some spotty parts, but like, I think for the most part, the stuff that was taken from the comic, like the worlds, like the way that the worlds were designed, like they go to this desert planet at the start, and like everyone's just walking around with headsets on because they're looking into the other dimension, and they can take stuff from that dimension and transfer it over to their dimension, and like they're basically shopping at this market in an entirely different dimension while just kind of wandering around in the desert. Like, they have all these interesting ideas, they have all these interesting planets, and they have all these interesting alien species, and it's kind of ruined by the actual movie itself. Like, everything, I thought all the setting,
I thought a lot of the sci-fi things were really cool.
The
like,
setting, the technology, like there's this
VR.
one part really briefly where he's chasing someone and he like throws down this like energy platform, and he kind of like throws down a couple of them and hops across them, and then it's just like they never bring that up again. But as for pretty much every other part of the movie, the acting is all around just pretty much awful from everybody. The leads have nothing.
I don't think the acting's that bad.
I mean, Harry Osborn and eyebrows were passable. Rihanna was pretty much all around
Rihanna
awful.
was pretty horrible, especially with the ADR stuff, which was 90% of her lines.
And then anyone else who wasn't a major character was kind of felt like a fucking, Babylon 5 or like, a cheap sci-fi TV series extra where like the general guy's like, I need to investigate this and get to the bottom of it immediately. And the plot itself was a mess where they'd spend like, I mean, this is something you're going to talk about too, but there's like 45 minutes of just terrible filler in the middle where everything from the second Rihanna appears on screen until the second she's gone.
It's not even that. It's from the exact second is when Eyebrows touches the fucking
the butterfly.
The butterfly gets
by
captured.
The cave trolls from Harry Potter 1.
And everything else for the next 45 minutes was literally 1000% pointless.
Yeah.
Nothing happened.
It has
any
no
importance or
real
relevance.
tie-in to the rest of the movie. And all the Rihanna stuff has nothing to do with the rest of the movie. And it's really just kind of like completely pointless and makes... This movie is pretty long and it feels a lot longer than it is. But besides ignoring the pointless filler in this movie for whatever reason, The plot itself is incredibly predictable. The second I saw the general, before he had even opened his mouth, I was like, okay, there's the bad guy, and...
Well, they characterize them like, whenever there's the evil, corrupt general, you can always tell he's gonna be that guy.
He's like, let me hold on to the specimen. And they're like, nah, we're gonna hold on to it. And he's like, alright, I'll just have to keep it then. It's like, come on, how much more obvious can you make this shit?
Fucking
even the
cliche.
Chinese who are gonna be paying out
so
the asses
fucking
of this
cliche.
movie will be able to figure it out in the second they see 10 movies a year, max. It's a really cliche, predictable, boring plot where at first they don't like each other, but they eventually fall in love. The general is obviously evil. Even at the end, like the first 10 minutes of the movie show the pearls on their home planet doing stuff, and then they keep showing flashbacks to it to make sure that the international audiences understand what's going on, and they have a Scooby-Doo reveal where they talk to the general for 30 minutes about his evil plans and why he's evil, and he's like, I was just trying to protect humanity. I'm not a bad guy. And then he's like, I'm gonna kill all of you with my bare hands. The movie is just incredibly predictable, cheesy garbage, and the action is pretty mediocre. There's not a lot to carry the movie except for interesting designs that are all ripped from the comics.
The movie is also straight 2.5 hours of action.
It is too long. The movie is too...
The entire thing is action scenes, relevant or not, which makes none of the action scenes that interesting, because it's alright, maybe we can get a minute of exposition here at some point, Butch Nitro.
Yeah. It's, the movie feels amateurish, especially, it's directed by Luke Besson. Besson? I don't remember the exact pronunciation of his last name, but he directed The Fifth Element, which is just a fantastic, campy movie. And when I saw the trailer, I was like, this is gonna be shit. When I heard Luke Benson was doing it, I was like, maybe he can kind of pull off the campy aspects and kind of salvage it, but in the end it was kind of it tried, despite the comic itself inspiring Star Wars and inspiring Star Trek, it felt less like it was an adaptation of the comic and more like it took the designs from the comic and tried to rip off the stuff that was originally inspired by the comic. It was ripping off Star Wars, it was ripping off Star Trek and Guardians of the Galaxy, and it was kind of just really a very incredibly mediocre movie that had a lot of potential.
This movie also had 40 straight openings. It was
oh yeah.
Introduced.
He wakes up on the beach and then they're like, okay, now this is our first mission.
They do the International Space Station for the first 8 minutes. And then he has the Pearl flashback for 8 minutes.
He wakes up and they're on the fake beach. And then, although I will say,
then 5 or 6 minutes.
The part where they're on the sand planet doing the virtual reality dimension stuff, even though it's kind of muddled what's actually going on, has decentish action, and it's by far the best part of the movie, where they're kind of just on a regular mission and kind of things go wrong, it kind of almost felt like a real movie for a minute.
It was also kind of cool because it was at first it felt like a really routine thing where neither of them are taking it that seriously, and then basically they get wrapped up into the conspiracy that is the rest of this movie, which I don't know, it doesn't feel like they did the work to have actually found this big conspiracy. The payoff isn't really there, how it was written.
Yeah, the movie also gets less creative as it goes on. During that desert part, he crawls his way to this grate so that he can slam, his arm gets stuck in the other dimension, and it's really heavy because it has these balls attached to it, and he slams it on the ground on the grate. If he slammed it on the ground anywhere else, he'd be on the desert, so he wouldn't be able to go down, but because he slams it on the grate, he's able to fall through the floors and get away from the people. And that's actually a creative moment that they do with the setting and the technology presented, and then they do nothing else like that in the rest of the movie. It's kind of just generic and dull. So I've kind of ranted about the movie enough. What did you think of the movie?
I saw potential in this movie. I looked into it quite a bit beforehand. I heard very little beforehand before I actually saw the movie, but this movie felt a lot like it was trying to be a lot of other things. There were definitely elements of Avatar. Like, the pearls felt like, as the movie went on, felt more and more like Avatar, especially towards the climax.
Okay.
Felt a lot like the avatars, I guess.
I googled it, and it doesn't seem like the pearls were ever originally in the comic. They were.
Yeah, I think this was supposed to be an original story.
So,
But the pearls did feel like a straight Avatar rip. Although they might have been one of the newer things, and they're kind of hard to find just because they haven't translated half of the fucking volumes. So it's kind of hard to say. But that said, thank you for taking me through my Avatar part. But basically, it felt a lot like the Star Wars prequels at a lot of points. Like,
yeah.
the pacing and the editing, and you know, our lead actors, they didn't do horrible, I guess. They didn't either really have very impressive portfolios to me, so I came in expecting worse, and I got better than I expected. Not that their acting blew me away or anything. The problem is, like, for a sci-fi movie with so much conceptual stuff, the plot was incredibly basic. I wanted something where I left kind of confused, or I needed one or two viewings to get everything out of it. I understood loud and clear what they were saying the entire time. Corporal Man comes up, he's the bad guy. I don't know why we needed a double crossing type plot in this, and why it had to be the corporal. He felt like the villain the entire time. The pearls, you knew pretty much automatically were good guys. You know, so he's basically connected to the princess that died because the princess who was introduced for the first 15 minutes of the movie dies. They transfer their soul out, and basically, I guess, she connected with fucking Valerian, and so he was integrated in this plot. But they kind of were meant to appear as the villains at first. I wish, you know, maybe the Flash, like, even if they still have the 10 minutes of footage, maybe once in a while he's having these dreams where he's getting these visions and no one else believes him, but he's like, look, except maybe, you know, Laurel believes him, or,
you know what else it could have been?
Could I finish my thought, please?
I'm sorry,
but you've talked the entire time. I would like to finish my thought.
Okay, I was trying to have a conversation.
Well, I want to finish my fucking thought because you
ranted
for fucking minutes.
Okay.
I was halfway through a sentence.
Okay, I get it.
I forgot what I was saying, so you might as well just say
it. Said nobody believes him.
Well, okay, what I was saying is, instead of just putting that thing straight out, what they could have done, which would have been better, is if maybe he starts piecing this up and he starts saying to Laurel, like, hey, you know, I'm starting to think that maybe these guys are the good guys, because we see them early on and they play an antagonistic role. Without them, without the pearls, there's no antagonist, which makes it incredibly obvious that the army man has to be the bad guy, especially how he's presented the entire damn time. So it was obvious. They made it way too easy to spot. Otherwise, there's no villain to the movie. Which obviously a lot of this movie was unfocused, hence the 45 minutes in the middle where I thought the idea was that this was like an origin story for Bubble and maybe she would play a role in the rest of the series. And then the second this 45 minutes is done, she dies. So she's introduced like a quarter of the way through the movie, and then at like the halfway point she dies, and it's like, what was the point? Like, I was literally watched the thing and I was like, are you fucking kidding me? What was the point? Why did I just waste the last half hour of my life? Not to mention, if this movie was an hour and a half and they stretched it to get 90 minutes, I would roll my eyes and ignore it. But I was already sitting in the movie for an hour, and then this thing that's between a half hour and 45 minutes happens, and there's still an hour left. And I was literally, at that point, I thought you could literally go into Windows fucking Live Movie Maker, click the split tool at the start, go to the end, click the split tool, delete, merge it together, and it would not have changed a single thing in the movie. No. Literally, if you did the flower, or when she touches the thing to there, and then cut that scene where she dies out of the trash compactor, and it would have looked like a normal cut, just like anything else. So I don't know if it hit like an hour and they're like, look, this movie's going to China and France. China and France, I guess, just don't care about logical storytelling, so we can just add this 45 minutes to fluff it up. And the whole time, the whole entire scene was cringy. Because Rihanna's acting, when she was on stage, was D acting. But the ADR was a complete and utter fucking failure.
Yeah.
She did so bad on her ADR work that it was completely pathetic. And it felt like, and I don't know how popular Rihanna is in France and China. I'm assuming pretty popular.
She's probably
at least in France,
I guess.
because a lot of American pop stars aren't popular in France. So she must just be a draw, and maybe they thought American audiences would be like, oh, Rihanna. Because Rihanna did a lot of the press tour for this, and it really just felt like that they got Rihanna somehow in contract, couldn't figure out how to put her into the real story, so they're like, oh, I guess we'll just make this side story. Which was pointless. Like, you know, they should have been fucked over for that, because they literally executed the king of these people. And I know they're like tribes people, but still, you're basically, even if these are complete savages, you did just butcher a huge portion of their population, and then execute the king unsanctioned, and then bailed. But, you know, they got away with it, and it was just completely pointless, because they killed Bubble at the end, tied it up in the neat bow, and bing, bang, boom. It was 100% pointless. There's no development for anybody. It was the biggest fucking waste of time. And I think, you know, everything else was on par with, like, the Star Wars prequels, basically. What were you saying?
Part of what makes the Pearls are supposed to be kind of seen as the villain at the start, but they spend 15 minutes establishing them as, like, these peaceful people who, like, sing and pick flowers with the birds and shit. What they probably should have done, like, you know, this is kind of some script rewriting stuff, so I don't know, but they probably should have had the Zoras from The Legend of Zelda, aka the Pearls, actually be in a war with the humans, and instead of, like, deleting all history of them, have people always saying how dangerous and violent they are, but then it turns out that they were kind of just, like, peaceful and trying to protect themselves. Then you can't get the
blatant message they're trying to do. These are Native Americans. Because what?
Yes, you can.
Pearls were blatant Avatar ripoffs.
They're defending their territory from the invading white man. That's what the Indians did.
Yeah, but it's even better if you slaughter them and put no fucking trace of them. Because that's what the white people tried to do to Native Americans.
It makes the twist with like 1,015 billion.
Well, they're assuming whoever's watching this movie is too retarded to understand that, anyways.
15 billion quotation marks around the twist.
Well, it was obvious the second guy designed exactly like James Cameron's Avatar.
Yeah, but if they tried to make the aliens kind of seem like bad people or even just questionable people, they could have almost gotten away with a twist like that. It still would have been
then
obvious.
You kind of rewrite the whole movie too, because then it's a blatant Avatar clone.
Okay, then don't. Okay, how about this? They didn't fight back at all. Everything's exactly the same, but instead of deleting all their history and trying to cover it up completely, the guy's like, yeah, they were savages who were attempting to team up with the bad guys, and then it turns out that was a lie. You don't have to rewrite a single thing, but it makes characters in the movie kind of consider them to be.
But then once we understand pretty much 15 minutes into the plot that they're the good guys, you still have the same problem where the general is just even more obviously. Like, before you could trick retarded people, but once that happens, it's just the retarded people have already seen Avatar, so they know what's going to happen. The problem is, the only thing that kept it from being completely James Cameron Avatar is that these fuckers didn't fight back. So,
I guess.
Unfortunately, I don't agree with your logic on that one.
I guess.
I mean, to be honest, the biggest problem with this movie is conceptually it was cool. There was a lot, the effects were great. The acting was passable. The problem is it felt a lot like the Star Wars prequels. I mean, you had the 3 Jar Jar Binks / Saboba monsters. Or not Saboba, what's that fucker?
They were Watto.
Watto. They were fucking Watto monsters. And
they were even Jewish like Watto.
That's what I was thinking. Like, from the start, I'm like, those fuckers are Watto. They fly around, they're little chubby Jewish people. It's racist. And, you know, I don't fucking know. This movie, I would have said okay. I would have passively said, you know, take it like the Star Wars prequels. I would have called it on par with the Star Wars prequels. The thing that took it over and just made it such a fucking unbearably bad movie that I think it's far worse than the Star Wars prequels was that 45 minutes of slapstick fucking Shrek fucking Harry Potter ogre fucking John Carter Warlord of Mars 30 fucking minutes of pointless bullshit that meant absolutely nothing to the movie and did nothing but take you out of the actual plot for 30 minutes in your already 2.5 hour long movie. I literally sat through, and once Bubble died, I said, thank you for wasting an extra half hour of my life. I was literally in the theater getting pissed off.
He actually did say that.
I literally was getting incredibly pissed off because it was pointless. It wasn't even well established.
It doesn't even make sense.
It was stupid. It looked like they added the fucking scene
You know
later.
what else doesn't make sense?
I don't even think they had it at first. I think for some reason they were.
I don't know how she even died, because
because
there's like multiple parts during the fight scene before where she's like cutting herself in half to dodge swords, and then she's like, I must have gotten
raised in
injured during the battle.
I
It's not
honestly,
saving me.
Here's what happened.
And then
I
she
think
turns into dust.
I think an executive watched this movie, probably from the China company, watched it and said, you know, this movie's a little short, you know, a mere 2 hours long, and where's that star power?
Yeah,
and
that's
they're like,
China.
who can we hire? And they're like, you know who's an up and who wants to act so badly that she'll do it for pretty cheap, and she can bring people in, and we can put her on all the American press tours. I think
Plus-
Rihanna was just there to put her on American press tours, and they could not figure out anything but to put this 45-minute short film in the middle, where it's some slapstick
I'm no
fucking
master
shit. It felt so out of tone, too.
I'm no master of Rihanna's discography, but there was a song by her that played over the credits that I'm guessing was an original soundtrack piece that they got because she was in the movie.
It probably might have been part of the thing where maybe when they commissioned her to act in it, they might have bought a new song. Otherwise, it's probably from her catalog. I know nothing about Rihanna's catalog, and I don't know if they were trying to push a soundtrack for this film too, which I'll look into it right now, because if it's an album-only song on iTunes, well, I could probably just look it up, but I'm just going to look.
I mean, they had a couple.
I don't know if they were trying to hawk off an album.
I wouldn't call it exactly Guardians of the Galaxy, because like they didn't do
Well,
it.
there
They
were
did it
things
twice.
that felt like they were inspired by Guardians of the Galaxy. They didn't
But
push it
right
as
at the.
much as
They
could.
didn't push it very hard, but right at the start
Valerian,
there was
City of Angels or whatever.
City of 1,000 Planets.
What the fuck ever. Okay.
They had right at the start of the movie they had Space Odyssey by
I don't know if
David Bowie.
Rihanna's in this album.
In the middle they had like
She's not.
In the middle they had like a rap remix of Staying Alive by Bee Gees, and I don't know who rapped over it. Do you know who rapped over it? Are you looking at it?
I'm looking at this right now, but it's hard to say. Oh, the song from the end I think is from Kara. Because there's a song by Kara in it. I Feel Everything. Let's see
I thought
this.
that was Rihanna.
I don't know if that was the one. Yeah, that one's by Kara, so they must have just
Is there
hired
one
her.
called like Staying Alive or something?
I know what you're talking about. I'm looking.
Because that was
through
really
this.
bizarre. That was like right.
Big Market. I think this is it. No. We're gonna get copy strikes for this, but whatever. Yup. Okay, We Trying to Stay Alive is the song by Wysef Slef Jean. I've seen the name before. I don't know if I've heard a feature with him or something. I recognize
What's it?
that. Wyclef. It was Wyclef Jean.
Isn't that the guy on the fucking Sonic Forces rap song?
You know, I really want. This movie had a ton of potential, but it dropped the ball. That's all I have left to say, really, is it had so much potential. There's so much stuff they tried to do. The world is really cool. I've looked a lot into the comic, although I haven't read it, and it seems like a really cool concept. The art's really beautiful on it. It inspired a lot, so in theory it should have been really good. I feel like part of this movie, where it fell apart, especially, like, the best part, like, the movie itself wouldn't be that bad. That 40 minutes in the middle felt like it was added as an afterthought, and they didn't really add anything to it. It really, really felt like an afterthought. And that really is what pulled this this movie for me from like passable, like enjoyable enough. Like it was on like Star Wars Phantom Menace level, where it had cringy shit, had some bad shit, some choppy acting, but it was watchable. And it went from like watchable, and I probably would have actually been willing to watch this again, just out of like the fact that I think a lot of the concepts were cool, like the city and CGI. It actually definitely piques my interest to read the comic, but the movie itself just wasn't that good. So Aidan, would you recommend Valerian?
Hell no. This movie is a fucking mess. But it did actually, same as you, it kind of got me interested in the comic, especially I googled it for a little bit, and like they're just like direct, blatant rip-offs from Star Wars of things in the comic, and a lot of these designs and the things that were in the movie came from the comic, and
Yeah.
they're really great imaginative ideas. I mean, Alpha, the International Space Station Gone Wild is just one of them. There's all these just fantastic alien designs. It's a really interesting world, and I think that this movie had a lot of potential based on what I know of the source material, which is granted not a lot, but I think the movie itself is kind of just like terrible. Definitely not worth your time, but if the things we've described sound interesting to you, it might be worth looking into the comic a little bit. So, Connor, would you recommend Valerian, Valium, and the City of Too Long of a movie?
Do not pay for this movie. It's not worth the money, and you're gonna have to sit through that middle 40 minutes. I feel like if somehow, I don't know if a fan of the comic, well, I can believe it. This has a pretty dedicated fan base, it sounds like. So, someone, if you're watching this video and for some reason you know of a fan edit, like whatever, a year down the line or in 2018 or something, somebody makes a fan edit of this, because it would be super easy for a fan to trim 45 minutes of fat off this movie, specifically cut that whole middle chunk out of it, shorten the intro a bit, maybe kind of, you know what you could do is you probably pretty easily chop it up and put it into, like, he had all these little dream sequences. You could probably just cut what he actually dreamed about out of them, and then just extend them with the parts, and then chop out the middle stuff. I think it would be a pretty relatively straightforward fan edit that would put this movie from pretty much unwatchable to an enjoyable enough experience, and potentially how it was edited is good. I feel like a lot of what killed it is that middle 40 minutes, and some of the editing was kind of choppy. I was surprisingly satisfied with the acting. I think there could have been better acting, but the people they picked look a lot like the comics, you know. Both Kara and Dane, I don't remember either of their last names, so I'm not even going to try, did a lot better than I expected they would do in their roles, because I saw Harry Goblin in The Enchantress, and I was fuck that. Harry Goblin. I've just always called him Harry Goblin, dude.
I mean, I don't know what else you would call him. New Goblin.
He's not new in the Amazing Spider-Man, though.
Oh, wait, no, he's not.
And he doesn't even really become Green. I don't think he calls himself Green Goblin. I think he just calls himself Goblin in the movie. So Harry Goblin's probably the most accurate way of putting it. I just would always call him Harry Goblin when I watched Spider-Man 3. Even as a kid, I called him Harry Goblin for the differentiating reasons. But regardless, I was delightfully surprised. I thought I would hate both of them completely, and they were fairly likable. The material presented got me really interested in the source material, so I'll probably try to pick up the early volumes. I know it's still a lot of the volumes. Apparently this movie kind of renewed interest in them localizing a bunch of the volumes, so I think there's something like 30 volumes or something like that, and they have like 17, or I think the 17th one just got localized, so I'd be interested in if I can get them on the cheap, which I'm assuming right now isn't really the time to look, but maybe in like a couple months I'll try to pick them up on like the cheap on eBay, because they're probably graphic novels that have like 3 or 4 prints each, I'm sure, so it's probably not too hard to find. I'd be interested to read them and check out the graphic novel, because the graphic novel looks really dope. I like the world that was presented here. I just think somewhere in translation the film really fucked up, and that 40 minutes in the middle just made it unwatchable for me. So I would have to go with no, but maybe check it out on online. Check the camera,
Go to your local video store.
Yeah, or when it comes out on Redbox, rent it for $1, and just like once you see her touch the butterfly, just keep skipping ahead until you see a corpse, basically. Until you see Bubble Girl's corpse.
I honestly think that a lot of this movie's problems can just be attributed to them aiming for the international market and just kind of
Well, that's what it
assuming that
was.
people.
This movie wasn't really made for America as much as it was made, because they're rolling the dice. In America, they're trying to make some gravy, and then they're going to try to bring it to China, because we do have the China production company working on this. And I have a good feeling it might make it to China, because this is a lot more popular internationally. The franchise is more popular internationally than America.
If a Chinese
So I think it'll do
company
quite well
invested
in Europe, specifically France, and if it makes it to China, I think it'll do very well. And I don't know how those audiences will perceive the movies, because obviously they see film and literature different than us, so maybe it was more made for them, but I don't know. As an American, just the way I like watching movies, I didn't really think the structure of this movie was set up that well. So, yeah, I think that's it. So, yeah, boy. Finish it up.